And welcome to another edition of the Batchelor News Radio Show. I'm your host, LA Batchelor. We thank you for joining us here on the show. As you can see behind you, the Batchelor News Radio Network. You can watch the show on Big Mind Entertainment. Just download the app. You can watch it on Fire Stick. Also, LA Batchelor at YouTube. And, of course, various podcast areas. Wherever you can find a podcast, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Spotify, we're there. And, of course, our own website. Go there to listen to the audio of this broadcast, thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. We thank you for joining us. You could have been doing anything else. You decided to be a part of this broadcast. Want to bring in my guest. He's a Washington Bureau Chief, President, and founder of LJC Media International Consulting in D.C., Los Angeles, and London. And he is a TV and radio podcast host. In fact, Just Parlay with Chris King. Always good to have on my good friend, Jim Williams. And Jim, it's a pleasure to have you on, sir.
Nice to be here.
Absolutely.
It's funny. We're having a little Wi-Fi problem, so I'm on with out the video today.
Okay, no worries. We see your handsome face on the screen right there, sir.
Oh boy.
And listen, I appreciate you allowing me to come on you guys' show the other day.
We had a lot of fun.
It was fun.
You're welcome anytime.
Absolutely. I want to talk before. I know you got an article out about Tom Brady retiring and ownership. We'll get to that in a sec. But I do want to talk politics. And, normally in this country, it seems, Republican or Democrat, that controls the body, if you will, the House, the Senate, the presidency, or at least a majority of it. When the midterms come around, that party in power tends to lose a lot of seats or whatever the case. You can go through all the presidents and take a look at it. But I don't think Democrats have done anything, Jim, and we talked about this the last time you were on, to try to accentuate the positives. Like they're allowing Republicans not only talk about the infighting with Democrats, and if you vote Democrat, you're gonna, the liberals will take over the country. Socialism is free, this and welfare and everything else. But they're also not talking about the things that have done, especially this president. In terms of lowering historically the poverty for kids and some other things that are going on. So why is that? And is it enough time to, at this point, insinuate those to help them in the midterms?
Yeah, I think there is. I think that what they need to do is it's messaging, right? And whenever you're not good at messaging, which the Democrats don't seem to be capable of doing at this point, then that's a problem. Let's think about this for a moment. Since Joe Biden is president, there's been a $2 trillion rescue act, which we needed during the first wave of COVID. There have been over 200 and almost 50 million people in this country have been vaccinated, at least one vaccination, most of them 2 vaccinations. You have a $2.5 trillion infrastructure bill, which is the largest infrastructure bill in the history of this country. You have had 40 judges have been confirmed. That's more than any other president in their first year other than Ronald Reagan, okay? You have unemployment, which is at one of its lowest marks in 2 decades. Yes, there is inflation, but that would have been under any president. There's no way that's not going to happen. You have supply chain issues. Again, those are going to happen. I mean, we had a once in a 100-year pandemic, and that's not something you just ease your way out of. But if you look at those 4 things or 5 things, right?
Right.
Then that's more than President Trump did in 4 years, and actually, to be honest, it was more than President Obama did in 8 years. But here's the thing: the Democrats, because they're bad at messaging, are blowing the opportunity to. Yeah, there's stuff in the big build back, build back better, build it would be nice, but you need to hone in on what you did right and worry about the other stuff as the time comes. And I mean, the other thing that's going to happen is we're probably going to get a Roe versus Wade decision sometime in the summertime, which will be before the election.
And Jim, just real quick, that in itself should scare people if that's where you are in terms of if you believe in a woman's right to choose. I'm not going to debate any of that stuff, but if you're on that side, that should scare the bejesus out of people to make sure that they're in tune and not only just vote, Jim, but making sure that Democrats understand how important this is and how to fight for it.
Right, and what they can do, because I don't think John Roberts, I mean, the court, just like you have a president has a legacy and a Speaker of the House has a legacy, a Supreme Court Justice has, Chief Justice has a legacy. I don't think John Roberts wants to be the guy who flips Roe versus Wade. It's settled law, and if you can flip Roe, you can flip any of them. I mean, we're going back to Brown versus the Board of Education. There's nothing that can't be flipped if you flip Roe. And so I don't think he wants to see that happen. And my guess, and this is purely a guess, is that they will split it and basically say, okay, they'll take the Mississippi ruling and let that go. And maybe they'll hold Roe, which would mean that basically they'll be throwing it back to the states. Now think about this, okay? The listeners out there. I don't know. Are you an organ donor?
I am. Okay. I am an organ donor. Yep.
Now, when you were to do that, right? What did you have to do? You had to sign a document that said that you would. Okay. So basically, that of course happens. Unfortunately, when we pass away.
Right.
So think about this. Think how absurd this is. A dead body has more power than a woman's body.
Wow.
A dead person has more rights to their body than a woman's body. And we all know that, all of these holier than thou folks who are saying, well, this is what it is. We're not a theocracy, okay? This is where church and state has to be separated. A woman, are we going to go back to the 50s where women have to, put their lives on the line if they want to get an abortion? I can understand the pro-life people. I can understand the pro-choice people.
I think though, what it really, Jim, I think what it really boils down to is, I mean, married, single, whatever the case, I don't think any man should decide what a woman wants to do with their body.
It's funny.
I mean, they're the ones that have to make that decision. If it was incest or whatever, or natural, that's their decision. That between them and their God or whatever the case may be. I don't care, even if you're the husband. Like, you don't have to carry that baby. Right. So I just believe that women, whatever they decide, is their decision.
It's funny
not some old dude in Congress trying to tell them what to do.
It was funny because last week on the show I told somebody if you don't have a vagina, you don't have a vote in this matter.
Right.
And I agree with you 100%. It's all of the burden is on the woman and none of the burden is on anybody else. And it's the woman's family. And more often than not, these are families that white, black, Asian, whatever, are at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to, it affects poor people more than it affects rich people. That's just the fact. And if you look at the states where most of this is being done, they spend, they make you have the child and then they don't ever help the child because most of these states have the worst infancy rates around the country because they don't help the mother in any way. They basically have cut back on the SNAP program, which of course is the stamps program, the old food stamp program. So they've done everything humanly possible to make a woman's life hell while she's having it. And then after she has the baby, all the burden financially and physically and mentally falls on her. It's just not fair.
And Yeah, and you make the point. They want to stop the babies from getting, aborted, but then when they're here, you want to cut the programs to help them.
Yeah,
So
the
you
same
can't have it
people,
both ways, right?
and the same people are, the same people are fighting for the death penalty. I mean,
Right.
what exactly? How does that? Okay, first of all, we just said a dead body has more rights than a woman's body, and then you turn around and say, "Oh yes, we're pro-life, except for when we want to kill somebody in the electric chair."
Right. Those are the same people who take the Bible literally. I want to get all whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
those are the same people would probably I'd be afraid of it if they said, well, slaves obey your masters with fear and trembling. So those are the literal. They probably would still be fine with that type of thing. Is my point.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, we'll talk with Jim Williams, of course, here on the Batchelor News radio show, a long time media person and TV and radio and podcast host, of course, here on the show. Jim, one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that's been in the news is critical race theory. You've seen Virginia, outside of having the Democrats running a poor Clinton candidate to win the governorship, but this Republican ran on that. The boogeyman is coming. They're going to teach your kids, you soccer moms, whites, they're going to teach your kids about John Brown and killing whites and this and that. And it's all, first of all, none of that happens from K to 12 anyway. Any
Mm-mm.
kind of conversations along those lines in the race theory and going back to that history, people understand and they do their research, like, they
Yeah.
don't even teach that in K-12. That's,
It's a
college
master's level
and
course.
right. So is this one of those things where you're seeing this governor win using that, scaring people out of the suburbs to come vote for him and everything else, even the urban inner city areas of Virginia, which never or haven't in a while gone Democrat in terms of those upper parts of the state? Is this a game plan that you see Republican using? And if so, what are Democrats going to do about it?
Well, first of all, it's basically, if you don't have anything, which they don't have any platform, they don't have any ideas, then you scare the living hell out of people, or you try. And critical race theory is just a code way of saying we don't want to hear about bad things that happened in history. Okay,
Right.
if I taught in history in the 7th grade and I taught about the fact that some of our founding fathers were slave owners, would I get in trouble? Could I get fired for doing that? In some states, the way that this thing is done is so ambiguous that it's quite possible that I could. Okay. If I wanted to teach people that, they're even talking about the Holocaust and saying, well, you can say it happened, but, don't go into detail. Well, how do you explain the Holocaust without going into detail? How do you explain slavery without going into detail? How do you explain the fact that we literally genocided how many thousands of Native Americans, in the interest of moving forward as a people? If you don't look, if this has only been a country where we've been a democracy since 1965. And I say that because, as you well know, that's when we actually got a Voting Rights Act. So in we had poll taxes and all kinds of other things. So we've only been a democracy in reality since 1965. Now, if you start talking about that in Northern Virginia and some of these other states, they go nuts. But you have to, it's history. It is history. If we don't realize what we've done, mistakes and all, then we're never going to get any better.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I hate to say it this way, but I know I know that who you are, so I can say it. That a lot of it is white guilt, right? Like it's a lot of people who don't want to deal with. Yeah, I know you don't own slaves, but it's a lot of this burden, this country looking at itself and not liking what they see and what they've heard and what they've done and what happened, the slaughter of Native Americans, as you said. And it's not just like a black thing, right? Like you just mentioned, like the Holocaust. They don't, Aryan, blue-eyed Dutch people don't want to talk about the Holocaust. They don't. So the critical race theory comes into a lot of play. So with that being said, just to follow up on the second part of that question was, what can Democrats do? What can people do to combat that? Especially because you don't want it to turn into an election of someone who feels like that.
No. Gosh, I think the only thing you try to do is you try to call it out for what it is. And that is that it's basically you don't want people to learn history. And history is, you don't learn and get better if you don't understand what history is all about.
Right. Yep.
So
what's your
if you don't want to find out about it, and the interesting part of it is if you like ban books or do any of that sort of thing, that's going to entice people to want to read those books more.
Right. What are you thinking is going to ultimately happen? I mean, the political, have Dr. Leon and stuff and other people, the political prognosticators, if you will, are, just predicting doom and gloom for the Democrats. They're going to get clobbered. They're going to lose the House and the Senate. And who knows what's going to happen in 2024.
Yeah, I still think that they have a chance. They just have to go out and message better. And, understand that scare tactics are not necessarily what's a good idea. The problem is that, in those blue districts, or I'm sorry, the purple districts, you have to be more careful. Because, what you got to hope that they run these crazies, the Trump group. If you run the Trump group, you got a chance of winning.
Absolutely.
Because they're totally whacked out.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have people who are saying in Michigan, go and unplug the voting machines if you think that they're not, if you think that there's something going on, and oh, by the way, bring guns to the polls, that's not a good idea.
Well,
and that's what happened over the weekend in Michigan.
Well, the one thing, Jim, is if you look at what Florida did, you're familiar with Florida, obviously, in their state capital and their legislation, in terms of this critical race theory, where the governor just passed a bill basically saying we don't have to feel guilty and have to hear all this negativity about our history in this state. And you see it around state capitals all over the country that's moving in that direction. And I think that leads to, and it could lead to violence. Protests can lead to violence. So then, and add into what you just said in terms of, people bringing guns to the voting booth and all of that. It's just, it really is a dire situation. It can be. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. I want to switch gears with you. You wrote an article, switching to football, folks, real quick. Jim wrote an article on Sports Talk Florida about a letter to the Glazer family on why they should offer Tom Brady an ownership stake in the Buccaneers. Now, the Glazers folk are the owners of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've been the owner for a long time now. Tom Brady, of course, their quarterback, seemingly retiring. And Jim, your point is that you need good people in your camp if you want to have that structure, that success that we've seen with the Patriots and the Steelers and other franchise. You mentioned Derek Jeter, who I'm a Yankee guy, so I get it. And even a Peyton Manning. And you can even say John Elway. Like John Elway wasn't no. You're saying some guys want to go to the broadcast booth and, Troy Aikmans and Tony Romo's and guys like that. But some guys want to continue their career in behind the scenes and be in management. So my only question to you is this. Well, let me start with this. Why would and are the Glazers the type of ownership that, albeit he is Tom Brady, want to give that up? You see what the Bus did with the Bus family denied Magic Johnson ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So why would the Glazers do that for Tom Brady?
Well, because in the long run, if you look at the franchise worth, the franchise in 2019 was worth $2.1 billion. Okay. At the end of this season, because we haven't tallied up all of the receipts and everything that goes into, the bottom line, they're going to be close to between 2.9 and maybe pushing $3 billion. Okay. That's in the 2 years that Tom Brady has been, involved with the Buccaneers. If you make Tom Brady the face of the franchise, and if you give him like the president's role, and remember that Jason Light is somebody who, they were teammates, they worked with each other in New England, they have a very good relationship. We got Bruce Arians down there, at least for another year. Probably then they'll go to Byron Leftwich, I would guess, or maybe even Todd Bowles. One of the two of them will probably become the successor. You've got yourself set up, and for Brady, it puts him at a position where he's the face of a franchise, and he is a power broker within the National Football League. He gets to go to the meetings with Jerry Jones and all the rest of the guys, and he's got a real bully pulpit, if you will, to work. So I think it would be wise for them to do it. I don't know if they will, but I definitely think that it's worth. I sent them the letter, so we'll see if
that was nice. The way you set that up, that was good. Let me. I'd be remiss, Jim, if I didn't ask the question as it relates to African Americans or minorities. I mean, this is a conversation you and I have had for a long time. I mean, the coaching, we only got one black coach, one Hispanic coach in the NFL.
Right.
Okay. Out of 32 teams, you got two. And I know, some people say, well, the teams run it, the league doesn't run it. But shame on them. Shame on them. The league is almost 90% minority, in particular African American. That's just the coach's side. Now, thank God Chicago and I forget the other franchise, Jim, they hired minority GMs,
right,
which is good. But ownership that's
well,
not even on the table.
Grail.
That's not even on the table. I mean, Michael Jordan is as great as his name is he really an owner? I mean, you see him around. He's got his dealerships here in the Tar Heel State and that kind of thing. But if we're offering, and you're right, and I understand the article, if you're offering ownership to the greatest winner in football and Tom Brady in football, quarterback-wise, and saying, hey, Glazers, bring him in. If you want stability, you bring him in. Then there's a lot of other guys out there that look like me or minorities that are ready, Magic Johnson, I just mentioned, that are ready to take that step. Thank God for the Dodgers allowing Magic to come in and be a part owner there. And think about the fact that he gave everything. He was the Lakers. They were horrible when he got there. He gave his whole life and career to the Lakers. He goes to the Buss family and they say thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
So as you talk about Brady, what about minority groups that want to come in and buy ownership? Is that ever going to happen?
Well, I think you see in Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, has bought a stake in the Kansas City Royals baseball team. So that's a start. We have Derek down in Miami. That's a start. It's my theory of the case here is with Brady, and it could be anybody. Could be anybody who has been with a franchise for a number of years, and has been very important to that franchise. It's good business. I mean, that was the theory of the case in my article. It's good business for them, okay? Because if Tom Brady, basically decides next week or next month or whatever, or even next year for that matter, that he's leaving, when he leaves, are the Buccaneers going to be where are the Buccaneers going to be? Are they going to be on that upward trail that they've been over the past couple of years, or are they going to fall back into the morass of what they used to be? And that's why I'm saying that I've always been an advocate of involving players in ownership, because then they've got skin in the game.
Right.
And you're not going to have any better, opportunities to promote your team and help recruit free agents and anything like that if you don't have people who played the game at the highest possible level involved in it. And from an ownership standpoint, when you're talking, I'll give you a real quick example. When John Elway originally was offered an opportunity for his stake in the Denver Broncos, what Pat Bowling said, look, is, John, I'll pay you $45 million, or I'll give you 8% of the team. And John, passed on the 8%. He took a minor percentage; it was less than 5%, and took most of the money. Well, in today's money, okay, that percentile of the Denver Broncos would have been worth $710 million. So he was penny wise and pound foolish. And that's why, he's now trying to put together an ownership group to buy Denver when he's up against Peyton Manning in Denver. So I think, to your point about minorities getting involved, minorities have gotten involved in the NBA. It's still a long way to go, but my theory of the case always is, if you have the power, then you need to exercise that power and push for ownership, push for a seat at the table. I mean, it's one of my favorite musicals is Hamilton, and there's a great song in Hamilton, which basically boils down to if you're not in the room where it happens, then you might as well not be there.
Right.
And so I think that what we're hoping for, right, is more minorities to be in the room where it happens, because that's the only way that you make significant change, and it's the only way that you can change the good old boy philosophy about how things are done. So, right. But if we take it and extrapolate it even one step further, right, we want minorities to be in the room where it happens politically as well.
Right.
So, the whole thing comes circular in this case, but,
Well, I don't know how you can exclude even women that's half the population. No. And so I don't, it's just this old boy network. It's got to change. And sometimes, I was taught sometimes you got to strong arm your way in.
Right.
Whatever it looks like, it is what it is. But, I just, and, we as human beings sometimes, I'm not making excuses for anybody. But sometimes we get comfortable with people that we know and that look like us and have the same values and beliefs and things. So we connect a little bit that way. But at the end of the day, if you have an Oprah or a Michael or whomever that has the money or the group, there's no reason why they should be excluded from ownership, other than the fact that ownership wants to keep that old boy network. And
look at what Tyler Perry's done.
Right.
I mean, Tyler Perry basically, has put together a multi-billion-dollar situation with his studios in Atlanta. And that was cooperative with himself and with a couple of movie studios, as well as the state of Georgia. So, I believe that we're now, look at LeBron. I mean, LeBron's done some amazing things. So I think that we're heading in that direction, but we're certainly not heading fast enough.
Right. Couple of quick points to stay on that. And of course, your article, we're going to make sure people know how to find it. It's a letter you put out to the Glazer family on why Tom
I
Brady
actually send it to them.
ownership stake in the Buccaneers. Sports Talk Florida. What about the coaching situation? We've had 4 coaches hired, none of them African American or anything. Byron Leftwich, I know Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City lost. And it's funny, Jim, when the black coordinators screw up, they're the ones calling plays. When they don't screw up, it's the other guy who gets the praise.
Right.
And so Eric Bieniemy has been getting killed because Kansas City lost. We'll get to who you think is going to win the Super Bowl. But, again, are we going to see – we only had 8 out of 32. And you add in Washington, 9 out of 32. And now it's down to 2.
Yeah.
And so are we going to see any more minorities be hired in this cycle?
I sure hope so, because whenever I pick up the paper or the Athletic and read about Jim Harbaugh being the next, coach, either, fill in the blank, either Minnesota or Miami, I get my stomach gets upset. I got nothing against Jim. I mean, we've always had a good relationship, but, you really want to pull a guy out of college and put him back in the pros when there's 5 or 6 guys out there who could do a whole lot better. Right. And I get mad because, frankly, I've been lucky enough to know some of these guys and to be around some of these guys, and I know that they could do a hell of a lot better than the retreads that we keep seeing show up. The D coordinator for Dallas gets a job as the head coach in Denver. Are they crazy? Did they actually watch any of Dallas's football game? I mean, what are they thinking? And I always get this thing where they say, well, they interviewed well. But what the hell does that mean? They interviewed well. Fine, they interviewed well. What have they done on the field? How are they perceived by the people who work with them, the players who work with them?
And I don't want to go too long, but they always talk about Bill Belichick's tree. All of his assistant coaches have been bad, except Mike Flores, the black guy who got fired in Miami. You look at Tony Dungy, you got Mike Tomlin, and Tony Dungy's a disciple of Dennis Green. So I mean, you have those same similarities, but they would rather take a guy who's got fired, horrible record, and recycle him than a coordinator or a Leslie Frazier who and those guys who've proven. Ray Rhodes going way back, guys like that who've proven they don't get second chances.
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is, I listen. All I'm saying is, just like everything else, keep it equal. If you give us the opportunity, we fail. Okay, you fire us, but give us the opportunity. That's where it starts. Then we get in there, we stink up the joint, then you get rid of us. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, look at the colleges, LA. I mean, the guy at Michigan State's the only one that got a good bump. There's a lot of, there's openings in Oklahoma, there's openings at USC, there's openings all around the country. I honestly believe that if things happen, if Mike, oh God, I can't remember why I'm blanking on his name, the coach at FSU. Mike Norvell. If Mike Norvell has a bad season this year, Deion Sanders is the next head coach of the Florida State.
Wow. Yeah.
There are people right now that want him to be the head coach of Florida State.
Right. There's people right now that want Deion Prime Sanders to be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So I mean, his name has been mentioned in a few places. But just again, I don't want to be legal to point, but opportunity. That's it. Everybody can be successful or fail, but give us the same opportunity to do one or the other based on what we know.
I had the pleasure of knowing the Rooney family pretty well, and I'll leave you with this. Dan Rooney, when they're talking to him about the quote-unquote Rooney rule, is Dan Rooney says, it shouldn't matter the color of your skin, it shouldn't matter your temperament, it should matter. It's like, what is the best interest of our football team? And if you look at it, The Pittsburgh Steelers have had 3 coaches since 1969.
Wow.
And the Rooney Rule, which was Dan Rooney's concept that you should be looking at minority candidates, not because you're doing it because of political correctness, but you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, just spoke to the way the franchises run.
Right. Absolutely. Jim, first of all, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? And then let people know where they can find the article and how they can follow you, sir.
Well, you'd be better off asking Chris, but I'm going to go. I'm going to go with the. I know Cincinnati fans out there are not going to be pleased. I don't know. I think the Rams at home. They just have. You call them splash players, right? What's that you call them? Splash players?
Right. Splash players.
They got some splash players. Look, I don't disrespect the Bengals at all. They're a fantastic group and they played well, so good on them. But I just think the Rams are going to be good. I think the line is 4 right now. I think it might go down to 3.5. I don't think it's going to get any less than 3.5. I don't think it's going to get more than 4. So that means everybody thinks it's going to be a close game. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I think the Rams.
I just hope that everybody has a good time and out there in SoFi and see what goes on. But I do think that the Rams, at the end of the day, might have a little bit more than the Bengals do.
Well, we'll see.
We will.
I'll give my picks later in the week, but my pick, I had the Rams and Kansas City in the Super Bowl, so I got one and lost one. So we'll see. Those Bengals, they play in the AFC North against my Steelers, so I don't like them. But
I'm not a fan either, but what can I tell you?
Yeah, I mean, they're there, and we'll see what happens. Jim, always good to have you on. All the best, man. Cheers to you.
Too.
And I appreciate you, man. Be careful.
You too, buddy. Be well.
Thank you. Going to get to our next guest here. Stay tuned on the Batchelor News radio show. Don't forget on the weekends, too, we have Whisper Softly from Sunday to Friday is Love Songs. This starts from 8 to midnight. And of course, on Feature Album Friday from 5:30 to 6, we have a featured artist that we feature with their music. It is the Batchelor News radio show. Stay tuned.
I'm not going very far. It's too uncomfortable. I'm in a hurry. Sometimes I just forget. There's no such thing as a good excuse for not buckling up. You're not only putting yourself at risk of injury or death, it could also cost you lots of money. Cops are writing tickets, so why take the risk? Do the smart thing and start buckling up every trip, day or night. Click it or ticket. Paid for by NHTSA.
The show, the Batchelor News radio show, we thank you for joining us wherever you are. You are a part of this broadcast. We appreciate you checking in. You did not have to do that. Don't forget, you can watch us on YouTube at LA Batchelor, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and of course, Big Mind Entertainment. If you have Roku or Fire Stick, you can download the Big Mind Entertainment app and you can watch there the audio version rebroadcast at thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. Want to bring in my guest. He is a columnist and director of content development for Alabama Media Group, AL.com. And of course, you've seen his work on various other places in terms of Sports Illustrated. He worked and was featured on the Last Dance with NBA Hall of Famer Michael Jordan's final season, co-authored books with Magic Johnson and Charles Barkley and all these other folks. Well respected, especially with me. He is Roy S. Johnson. And Mr. Johnson, always a pleasure to talk with you, and thanks for joining us.
Good evening. I appreciate you having me. I apologize for not having my camera on. I'm in my car and I don't think the local law enforcement would appreciate me trying to look good for you and your audience as I'm navigating the street. So I apologize.
No worries, no worries. Well, look, we don't want you getting in trouble with law enforcement just to do some interview on some show, right? So I understand. Listen, you've done so much, the gamut, like you've just sports and outside sports. And of course, this particular article you wrote, this opinion column you wrote on as it was published as it relates to Dr. King. The title, On This Day and Beyond, Black Folks, We Must Honor Dr. King This Way. Stop killing each other. Now, I just want to read just the short part of the beginning. You said, quote, I don't want to see another balloon rise towards the clouds to honor a dead child, an innocent dead child. I don't want to hear another mother's anguish, see another's father's tears, or watch another's teenagers cling to a friend as they share kind of grief no young person should bear. I don't want to look at another child's eyes, see them smile, hear them giggle like kids do, and think it could have been them. Today, as we do each January, we should do, all of us, honor the life, legacy, and sacrifice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We'll reread his quotes, most of which are relevant today, sadly, as they were last century. I wanted to start with that because when you write that and we look at the climate that we're in, not just the COVID climate, Mr. Johnson, but also the climate of our divide amongst ourselves, where do we start? Because, you know, there's education that needs to happen amongst our culture. We have to get back to a mentality of a village to raise a child. We're missing so much. So where would be the origin, the beginning to get to us not killing each other?
I wish I had a simple answer. We had all day to try to dissect what is clearly a complicated and complex ecosystem that didn't evolve overnight, and so it's impossible and not realistic to think it can be solved overnight. Certainly for me, and I think for many of us, the beginning is acknowledgement. Just as with any challenge, when if you're in AA, you stand up at the meeting and say, "Hi, I'm Wayne, I'm an alcoholic," and they that's the first step in terms of rehabilitation. And I am very well aware of the conditions and circumstances that have contributed to a place that often makes young people make desperate decisions, make deadly decisions. We all know that poverty creates situations and creates a lack of hopelessness that leads people to believe that their lives are not worthless and are not worth much, and that the lives of others are worth even less. So we know that there are things that led up to this, but at some point, I think we all have to look at each other and it's like look in the mirror and see what we see and say, okay, we have to demonstrate the same level of outrage when we kill our own as we do when others kill us, whether they are law enforcement or in any other situation. The director of a local Boys and Girls Club, and I'll give you some background, a 16-year-old here, a junior at a local high school, was coming home from work. And she was riding in her great aunt's car. This was a young person who liked to play the saxophone, who was doing reasonably well in school, who had just been selected as the member of the year at the local Boys and Girls Club. So she had a bright future. And as she was in her neighborhood, in her great aunt's car, a shootout occurred nearby, and someone using what was clearly an assault rifle sprayed bullets through the car, and some of those bullets, as they often do, go where they're not intended. One of them pierced the great aunt's car and struck the young girl. The aunt drove to a local fire station, and the girl was taken to the hospital, but she died. And we have all read the headlines and seen stories, no matter where you live, of young Black kids dying, often at the hands of other Black kids or Black youth. And at some point, we just all have to, we kind of go about our lives. Our hearts hurt. We feel something, and yet we all go about our lives. But if something happens or someone else commits a crime against us, we march in the streets, as we should. We should to respond to any sort of injustice done to us by others. But I think I'm just saying that it's time for us to demonstrate that same level of outrage, that same level of just, we can't have this anymore, with ourselves. And so it starts with doing just that, and sending that message to particularly our youth, that there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better decision. There's got to be a consideration of other choices, to take a deep breath. I love what organizations like the Boys and Girls Club and thousands of others around the country are doing to pour into our youth. And I want to make sure that your listeners understand that the vast majority of our young people are going to school. They're doing the right thing. They're trying to make the right decisions. So I don't want to at all have us paint our generation as one that has fallen off a cliff, because the numbers show that this is just a small number, a small percentage of our youth that are committing the kind of crimes and putting themselves in situations and doing the kind of decisions that are costing people their lives. But it's more and more, and one life lost is too many. One life, one young person paralyzed, because it's really two lives. It's the life of the person who dies, and it's the life of the person who pulls the trigger. Even if it's something they have to live with the rest of their lives, and if they get caught. And I think most of us do hope that those people who commit these kinds of crimes are caught and are punished to the full extent of the law. Their lives are over too. So I just think it's time for us to not shy away from being critical of ourselves, and just forcing ourselves to say, hey, this is a problem in our community, and we have to first acknowledge it before we begin to address how to change it, how to fix it, and how to twist that lever so that we begin going the other direction of saving lives instead of lives.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with Roy S. Johnson here on the Batchelor News radio show. So, some people feel like, in other words, once we wanted to integrate, we had our Jezebels and our Judas that were amongst us that, worked for the other side, let's call it, to keep us oppressed and everything. I say that to ask this, and to be an advocate, just not to just say it, but just to ask how much of the origin of oppression, of Jim Crow, going way back, where we didn't either understand or never climbed out of that situation, has led to where we are now in terms of killing ourselves.
There's no question that that today has an impact on tomorrow. Yesterday has an impact on today. So I'm not a trained historian, so I could not sit here and would even try to articulate the impact of all of our experiences on the conditions and circumstances and decisions that we make today. No doubt that whether it's redlining, Jim Crow, the distribution of our socioeconomic groups, whereas I'm old enough to remember segregation and to know that no matter what economic level you enjoyed, you all lived in the same neighborhood because we had to. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My father was a survivor of the 1921 race massacre. He owned a store on Greenwood, on Black Wall Street. So I have memories of a neighborhood where whether you were poor or well-to-do, you lived within a few blocks of each other, if not next door or around the corner. That has clearly changed as more and more African Americans were able to move and live in other areas. And so, yes, all of that has an impact. And we know that the public housing communities that concentrated poverty half a century ago, we know that those experiments, that those housing communities that concentrated poverty does not work. and it does, as a matter of fact, is a detriment to just the livelihood of the people who are living there. So we know all of those things are a factor, but man, do we put all of this on them when you have 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds who get in a beef over a young lady? You may have some who are involved in the drug trade. I mean, we just got to be real and say, can we look back and blame all of that on decisions that are being made? Or can we begin to figure out how to break the curse? How do we stop at least one young person from making a deadly choice? Yes, all of those things happen, but they don't give us a license to kill each other.
Not at all. The only thing I'm wondering is that, you know, you hear that term, babies having babies, or you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't have mentors, if you don't have people in positions to say, no, this is wrong, I understand what you're saying. You know, if you're a right mind and body, and you're you know, a young adult or an older teenager, then you understand right from wrong, but you don't know what you don't know. And if you're growing up in certain areas and certain, like you're from Tulsa, I come from the straight projects, like, you know, pissy hallways and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, just real talk. So, you know, so I understand. And in my hood, you either was going to follow the bad guys, the drug dealers or whatever, or you're going to jail or get killed, or you rise above. Those were your choices. And so what about those who are not strong-minded? What about those who want to do right, but they're not leaders? They're not those who understand, you know, how to rise above, how to say no, you know, the peer pressure and all those things. What about those situations and those people?
No, there's no question that as we attack this, it is all but impossible to save everyone, and it may be hard to calculate who is saved, because that person is being saved by a decision they don't make, or a decision they do make, but one that keeps them out of the line of fire, one that keeps them from pulling the trigger. And in the unfortunate case of Jasmine Wright, who was the young woman who was killed here, she was doing the right thing. She was just coming home from work, which makes her situation even more tragic. So there's no question that not everyone is going to be able to avail themselves, but that doesn't mean we don't try. We try by encouraging our young people and exposing them to a path where there is hope for them to lead a productive, sustainable life. You know, we talk about how hopelessness has left some of our neighborhoods. We have to invite it back. It starts when the youth are young. When there was that balloon release for Yasmin last week, I just looked into the eyes of about 50 to 75 young people, just 7, 8-year-olds. They were all sitting there, Black, white, and Hispanic, laughing and giggling and doing what kids do. And you just pray over all of them to think that each of them will see their 18th, 19th, and 20th birthdays, and not have to make a choice to get into the drug trade, or to make a decision to, you know, the stuff that we all used to fight over, right? You know, you fight over a girl, you fight over something, you have some beef over something. But you know what happened to the fisticuffs in the playground, and we all went to the principal's office, and, you know, we became friends later on. Whereas now some of those situations end up deadly. You know, we have to support any efforts to keep guns out of our community. I know here in Birmingham, they'll tell you how many guns have been confiscated every week. But they'll also tell you that for every gun that is confiscated, another one finds its way back into the community. At some point, we have to shut the door and not accept guns coming into our community. So it's exposure. It's continuing to let our young people know there are pathways to prosperity, pathways to hope. It is supporting efforts to keep guns out of our community. It is supporting our schools and our teachers, because they have to deal with things that often start at home. In our schools in Birmingham, I know we have 100% student body that qualifies for free lunch. So some of these kids are getting their best meals of the day at school. So we have to support our teachers, and we have to support our churches. Our churches should be playing a significant role in helping create that village we talked about, not just to help raise the kids, but help to support parents who are trying to make better decisions. There is no question that if no one poured into you, it's hard to pour into someone else. And yet there are resources, there are places to go for where you can learn a better way, where you can get some encouragement and some mentorship as a parent. And so I would like to see more parenting programs evolving as well, to begin to help those parents who do want to raise their children in towards a right path. And let's face it, no matter what a parent may be lacking, I can't imagine that there's more than 0.1% that don't understand that killing someone is wrong, and certainly don't want to lose their child. So while they may or may not have the best overall parenting skills, I don't know of any parent that wants to lose their child or see someone else's child killed. And I know that's the preponderance of parents in our community, in every community. And let's just continue to support them and lift them and give them what they need in order to raise their kids in the right way.
If you're just joining us, talking with Roy S. Johnson, of course, he wrote the opinion piece, "On this day and beyond, Black folks, we must honor Dr. King this way. Stop killing each other." Roy, I just want to give you 3 examples of what I've gone through. I know other people have gone through, and then I want to read something that someone sent in the chat room. And the first thing is, to your point, when we were growing up, you might have gotten into a fight or got double teamed, and heck, in one situation, somebody pulled out a blade, I got cut in the arm. I went from that to walking in the wrong neighborhood, Black neighborhoods, to the 4 of us running into, I don't know, 7 or 8 of those guys, and one pulled out the gun, said, "Your shoes or your life." So it went from getting beat up or jumped to that situation, which could be fatal. And then, again, talking about people that you grow up with, you have these options. And, one guy wanted to play. We knew he had a gun. He wanted to play Russian roulette with the gun. By the grace of God, stuff happened in my life, and I didn't go, but somebody did. One guy got shot. The other one who shot him went to prison. So to your point about 2 people being affected, Black on Black crime, Black on Black tragedy, I call it, is one of those things that happen. Someone had written, Marcus in Detroit said, "We don't own gun companies and poppy fields. It's all deliberate." What say you?
Okay. Roy, I'm not. I heard it. I was just pausing. Okay. So okay, we don't own them. We own we don't own the grocery stores either, but we eat, right? We make choices about what we eat. We just have to make better choices. To say we don't own the gun companies is I don't know how to respond to that. We don't own a lot that we still make decisions about. We don't own the car companies, but we drive. We don't own the clothing, many of the clothing lines. We make choices about the clothes we wear. So I'm not sure what the point of the.
Well, at the end, he said it's all deliberate, is what he said at the end.
Yeah, that's certainly an opinion that is shared by a lot of people, and I certainly respect people to have their opinion. I still think that we make choices,
right?
And we have to take responsibility for those choices. Just because someone hands you an unripe piece of fruit doesn't mean you have to eat it. So we have to get stronger and not accept the deliberation of others, if in fact it exists, to cause us to make deadly choices.
Yeah, and stronger might be the key word too, Roy. What you're talking about, being strong, again, that weak-minded, and if you don't have the mentors and people doing a right thing. Let me quickly read a couple of things. So I want to get to a point before I let you go. You said, sure. Well, dream, of course. Well, relive Dr. King's historic speech on the steps of Lincoln Memorial nearly 6 days ago, some conveniently recall only those portions of the discourse that soothe their discomfort and their guilt. The rest of us must remind them of the hard truth of which Dr. King espoused that day on the nation's stark economic inequality. Quote, America has given the Negro people a bad check. This is what you're quoting Dr. King. He said, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds, but we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. So we come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice, end quote. I bring that up because, you speak about Dr. King. We talk about what his legacy is of peace and justice. But he in that justice, remember he talked about, and I know you're well versed in, the white moderate, and be careful. The scripts and the writings that he did when he was locked up in Montgomery, Alabama. You're in Alabama, where he was talking about, that, and he spoke out about the Vietnam War. So the notion that it was just we pray it away and we don't act upon things, I think, is disingenuous, because they always want to do the I have a dream speech and keep it moving. So what do you say about that part of Dr. King, is that we have to be aggressive. We have to be progressive. We can't just sit and wait for, I call, the other side to give us. Certainly they're not going to acquiesce. So, what about that part of Dr. King that's basically saying, we got a bad hand, so here's what we need to do. He's not the only one. Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X, I mean, a bunch of people had that mentality.
Yeah, there's no question that generations of injustices and inequities have been perpetrated against us. And Dr. King, you have to remember, now in the late 50s, early 60s, was leading the effort for us to just not just a seat at the table, to be able to get in the room with the table. Where the level of inequality in that era was so vast. It was just inaccessibility, redlining, Jim Crow. I mean, it was an abomination. So the lead of his fight was for that. And towards the end of his life, he began to look at economic inequity. And when he talked about that bad check, he talked about America being bankrupt in terms of what its promises of equality, even going back to Reconstruction, the things that were supposed to be done in the late 1800s that were not done. The banks were created that were taken away. So much wealth was taken away from African Americans. Again, the 1921 race massacre, hundreds of businesses destroyed, and there's no reparations for those. So there is no question that those things existed. And King was a multi-layered leader, and he did talk about those things. And but what is interesting too now is that a reader last week, after looking at my column, said Dr. King may not recognize us now. He may not recognize the community he was fighting for because of so much of the infighting and the killing that is going on among us. We didn't have that back then. That just didn't. I mean, I'm sure it existed to a degree, but certainly nowhere, no way to the degree it is now. So King would certainly challenge us to, get it together, get our act together. He was love. He's a preacher. Love. Right. It begins with love. So he would certainly be espousing. I would. I don't want to speak for him, but I would believe that he would agree that before we can go out and challenge others to do better, that we have to do even better ourselves.
Do you suffer from chronic CFED or can't focus energy drain? Try over-the-counter Vibrant. One tablet contains the same caffeine as a cup of coffee, but without the calories or coffee breath. Vibrant. Caffeine, not coffee. Taking Vibrant may result in increased productivity and decreased dread and setting alarms. Unexpected enjoyment of the graveyard shift has been associated with Vibrant. Vibrant may be a better budget option than drinking coffee. It may also decrease the urge to doze off, skip work, or exhibit signs of slacking. All jokes aside, always read the label, take only as directed, and limit caffeine as it may cause real side effects. Not for children under age 12.
Welcome back to the show. We thank you for joining us here on the Batchelor News radio show on the Batchelor News Radio Network. WCOM. You can listen to the show there as well. We certainly just thank you for checking in with us on this broadcast. Don't forget, if you miss any part of the audio version of this, you can go to thebatchelornews.airtime.pro, thebatchelornews.airtime.pro, and you can check out the broadcast there. And we certainly appreciate you if you do decide to do so. I want to get to my next guest in just a minute here, and bring him into the fold, as I want to pull him up here. Good to have him on. He is the co-host of Just Parlays with Chris King and Jim Williams from Winners and Winers. He is Chris King. And Chris, it's good to have you on the show. First of all, first time.
Glad to be here, LA. Thanks.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us. That you could be doing anything else. We appreciate you checking in. So I wanted to recap where we were when it came to the NFC and AFC championship games. And I was on your show, and thank you for allowing me to come on.
Always welcome.
Yeah, I told you guys on your broadcast, I picked the Rams and the Chiefs to start the season, even before preseason, whatever. Rams, Chiefs. When I heard Matthew Stafford was going there, I picked them. I'm more surprised at the Chiefs, the way they played the Bills, and the Bills gave them everything they got, that they lost, rather than the Rams, because of how the 49ers have played the Rams over the last 3 years or so. So what say you? Were you more surprised at the Chiefs losing or the Rams winning?
Well, like we said the other day, we thought Cincinnati was a year ahead of schedule. And I still think Cincinnati is a year ahead of schedule. Nobody would have expected Kansas City to blow that game, but what Jim and I talked about earlier is Kansas City got greedy. At the end of the half, they could have kicked a field goal, would have made it 24-10. Instead, they try to gamble with the clock, doesn't pan out. Then, the end of regulation, they try to get happy or try to get cute again, and it backfires. Mahomes gets sacked on back-to-back plays. Instead of having a chance to punch it in the end zone, you got to kick a field goal and end up in overtime again. And I'll tell you, when they won the coin toss, I thought we were going to see the same stupid crap we saw the week before. But instead, Mahomes throws an interception. Cincinnati goes down the field, kicks field goal. That's it for Kansas City. I wasn't so surprised by the Rams. I was surprised that they ran the ball as much as they did, because that's normally San Francisco's MO. But they didn't move. The 49ers didn't move the ball on the ground at all. And that was disappointing if you're Kyle Shanahan, to run the ball 20 times for 50 yards. Deebo Samuel had 26, and Elijah Mitchell had 11 carries for 20 yards. That's not going to get it done, because then you're relying on Garoppolo to throw the ball. And who wants to see that?
The thing is that you made a couple of points. I didn't have a problem with the Chiefs going for it at halftime. I had a problem with the play call. Why don't you just line up Travis Kelce single coverage on the outside, and then you expect your guy to beat the other guy.
Right.
They didn't run that, and they ran something with Tyreek Hill. Good play when what's the name? Apple. What's the name?
Yeah, Eli Apple.
Eli Apple and playing the play, but I was more disappointed in the play calling rather than the fact that they didn't go for the field goal. Because if you throw it to Kelce, he got man coverage. He's outside. He can line up like a receiver. He misses it, then you kick the field goal. But the play that Patrick threw was going to be short anyway. It was, and it ran out the clock. So it didn't make any sense. Plus, he seemed a little bit confused on how many timeouts. It was just kind of weird.
Yeah, they were indecisive with that play call. You're right. Had they had gone with something where you know that you've got 5 seconds, either it's open or it's not. You don't try to run this looping. Basically, it looked like a glorified screenplay almost,
Right.
and that wasn't going to work because, like you said, if you get tackled, you're done. So either you take a shot at the end zone, you go to Kelsey, you go to Hardman or Pringle or something like that. If it's not there, you throw it away, you kick the field goal. You don't try and run a play like that. It's just not gonna. It's just not good play calling, and that's a surprise coming from Eric Bieniemy.
Right. Yeah. It was really a surprise call that they came up with, but it is what it is. But what about Joe Burrow? Listen, you are a Bills diehard, so you got a quarterback. We know what Josh Allen can do. And I'm shocked. Like you said, they're a year. I even thought maybe 2 to get the offensive line together or whatever in terms of the Bengals. They're not the Bungles anymore. We know that. But where do you put Burrow in this conversation, especially if we're expecting Brady to retire? Where do you put Burrow at this point?
The funny thing is we had somebody come out today and say that Brady Quinn said that Joe Burrow is the next Tom Brady. And I said, consider the source. You're talking about Brady Quinn. What did he do in the NFL?
Right.
About as much as I did.
Right.
Let's be honest. Joe Burrow is more concerned about being the best Joe Burrow he can be than worrying about being the next anybody. I would put him in the upper echelon of the quarterbacks in the league. Is he at the Mahomes and Allen level and guys like that? Probably not quite yet, but he's on the way. He's probably right there with Justin Herbert with the Chargers. There's a lot of good young quarterbacks in the AFC now. It's going to be an interesting thing to see how those pan out. You still got Lamar Jackson for what he does.
But Chris, how do you justify? I mean, I'm just playing advocate. How do you justify Burrow? I'm just playing advocate. Burrow being below Allen when Burrow's going to the Super Bowl, Allen still hadn't gone.
Because Burrow is still only in his first full year. I want to see him continue to progress. He's got to make those steps up the ladder. Yes, I get he's in the Super Bowl. I'm not going to take that away from him. However, if you look at the 3 games that they've won in the playoffs, they've been outgained in all 3 of them. Right. Tennessee gave them the game.
I was going to ask you about those stats in terms of how they played and their offensive line in terms of sacks.
Yeah, I don't understand what Kansas City was doing yesterday. They didn't rush the passer with any kind of ferocity, I should say. They only sacked Burrow once. Now, Cincinnati was the second worst pass blocking offensive line as far as pass block win rate in the league. We saw Burrow get beaten senseless by Tennessee to the tune of 9 sacks the week before. 2 weeks ago, he got dumped 5 times by the Raiders. Kansas City sacked him once? I mean, what is that? You've got Chris Jones and Frank Clark in the defensive line. Everybody talks about how they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But they did nothing in that game. Meanwhile, Mahomes got dumped 4 times by a Cincinnati pass rush that's middle of the pack at best. I don't know what Steve Spagnuolo was trying to draw up. I guess maybe he was too concerned about Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and all those guys slicing up his secondary, which, let's face it, they couldn't tackle Samaje Perine on a screenplay. So I guess there's something to that. But you've got to get pressure on a guy that's been dumped more times than anybody else this season. I mean, Burrow was dumped 51 times in the regular season. Then in that Week 18 game where he didn't play, Brandon Allen got sacked 4 more times.
Well, and the thing is, too, Chris, remember on your show, I was saying, listen, they need to be able to get pressure with the 4 and zone the back 7. I think that's what it was. I'm not a big Steve Spagnuolo guy. Going back to the Giants, and I'm not. But, I just think maybe, I don't know, maybe the scheme, well, put it this way, I think the Bengals had a better, game plan. Like protect Joe Burrow. They chipped, they can dump it down the mix, and they had all that stuff. The Chiefs had to get pressure, and I said this on your broadcast. They had to get pressure on the front 4. If the front 4 can't do it, they're not gonna win. And to your point, I don't know why. Maybe he should have blitzed. Maybe he should have sent the linebacker or safety off or corner off the end. He didn't do that. And
there's something to throw him off his rhythm because you're letting him stand back there, and even if you got pressure a little bit, he slid to the side or he ran.
Right.
I mean, he ran 5 times for 25 yards. Nobody expects that.
And he's not a run. and he's not a runner. So that was, I just don't understand. Let's go to the NFC. T, I see you. When you look at the NFC, and I was surprised in the game plan with Shanahan. Now, Sean McVay, to me, coached a little scared. Like he was kind of panicking. They were down 10, so I get it. So he's probably having this here we go again moment. So, but talk about how they came back. This team in the playoffs, and in particular Matthew Stafford threw the pick and all that. He comes back, makes the play. I mean, they look a lot different. And oh, by the way, Cleveland fans who want to support Baker Mayfield, listen, OBJ has been one of the difference makers on this team. You got Cooper Kupp and him and Matthew, and they're all on the same page. They just seem to know he knows where to throw. They know where to catch it. So, but talk about this Rams team coming back the way they did, down 10. People, all the fans probably go, oh, my God, here we go again. We're going to lose to the 49ers again. And they're going to the Super Bowl in their home stadium.
Well, I mean, let's not take away, too, an unsung hero for the Rams yesterday has got to be Kendall Blanton. He got thrown in there because Tyler Higbee got hurt, came in, caught 5 passes on 5 targets for 57 yards. If Higbee misses the Super Bowl, that's going to be a big blow for them. I mean, obviously, he's been a very prolific tight end. So if Blanton can step up and replicate any kind of production like he did yesterday, that's going to be a big boost. Like you said, OBJ caught 9 passes for over 100 yards yesterday. Cooper Kupp did Cooper Kupp stuff because apparently nobody bothers to guard him.
I don't know why. I don't know why.
Let's not overlook the fact that you have to give credit where credit's due. And Jaquiski Tart dropping that interception that hit him in the hands did not help San Francisco's chances. I mean, the ball was served up to him. You couldn't hand it to him any better, and he dropped it.
Right. Well, that's why he plays defense. I play defense. We have no hand.
True.
Zero
I
hands.
was surprised that they let Cam Akers run the ball. I figured that he would have sat on the bench and never seen the field, but they stuck him back out there. He ran the ball. He wasn't all that effective. He had 13 carries for 48 yards, but that was better than Sony Michel, who did nothing. I was disappointed with his performance. I thought that he'd be more proactive as the second back, but 16 yards on 10 carries isn't going to get it done.
Right.
But the Rams, like you said, Stafford looked good. He made up for that goal line interception that he threw in the first half. And the Rams came back.
Which I thought, Chris, that was it. Like, oh, my God. Just like Kansas City, that was just – they're done. Like, he threw that pick. I'm like, oh, my God, they're done. But he came back.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those plays where he tried to force it in there, trying to get it over the middle of the cup. And then, you figure later in the half, too, they missed a field goal. I mean, that's the second time you've seen Gabe miss a field goal in the playoffs. He came up short on that kick against Tampa Bay last week. And that set up San Francisco with good field position to go down the field right before halftime to take the lead because they got the ball at their own 44-yard line. But, yeah, you're right. He played better in the second half. He regrouped. They used their top options. When you got Kupp and Beckham out there, the one thing I do wish is that Robert Woods was healthy.
Right.
Losing him, that was a big blow, not only as a pass catcher, but Woods is a good blocking receiver that could have opened up some stuff in the run game. I know they miss him. And defensively, you look at the 49ers' last couple drives after the Rams scored to make it 17-14, punt, interception.
Right.
So when the game was on the line, Jimmy G didn't have the answers.
Right, and we talked about Jimmy G there. If you're just joining us, and Tony T-Mac McLean, my co-host, has some questions for you. We're talking with Chris King. He's the co-host of Just Parlays with Chris King, Jim Williams from Winners and Winers. A stat guy. I mean, he knows sports, but the guy, I'm not a numbers guy. My co-host is a numbers guy. You're a numbers guy. And it's just phenomenal what you know inside of these games. Let me ask you real quick, though, before I go to T. I talked about Matthew Stafford in terms of, okay, big play, 42 seconds, the big pass. They beat Brady and Buck. Did he get over the hump? No. You got to get to the Super Bowl and win, because Carson got to the Super Bowl.
Right.
Now you need to get to the Super Bowl and win. Does he, with that being said, because I've heard some other people, has he done enough to say, okay, he's not the stat guy from Detroit. He had Megatron and all that kind of stuff. Is this the real Matthew Stafford? And do you think we'll do predictions later. Do you think that he performs at a high level, let's say, in the Super Bowl, to say to his doubters, listen, I just needed some help around me?
Well, I think so. I mean, if you look, like you said, in Detroit, he had Calvin Johnson, but what else did they have? The Lions were horrible. They've been horrible for years. I mean, look at all the talent that Detroit has wasted over the years. Look at how they wasted Barry Sanders' career. They wasted Megatron's career. They wasted most of Stafford's career. Now he's gone somewhere where there's other talent around him. He's got targets he can use. People aren't triple teaming anybody or trying to mug him so he can't get the ball. I think, you've seen him win 3 playoff games now. He only went to 3 playoff games in his career in Detroit. So you're talking about a guy that's shown he can win. Can he win in the Super Bowl? We'll have to see. But he's got the talent around him that he's definitely got a very good shot at.
And one of the things about him, the one thing, this is why I thought the Rams, this was a good fit for him. I'll bring in T-Mac. I thought that Matthew Stafford, and Chris, you're the stat guy, but when you blitz him, he'll make you pay. Even in Detroit, he made big shots. And a lot of people forget, he's got the comebacks, and comebacks can be kind of misleading because that means you're down. You got to keep coming back, right? So it's not, but I thought he's a smart kid. So if you blitz him, he knows where to go. He's a pre-snap guy, like the Bradys and the Peyton Mannings and Russell Wilson. Like, he could see it, and then he makes the play. I always question if he, can try to force the ball, like you said. He forced it on that goal line thing, and it didn't happen. But I thought once they picked him up, I'm like, okay, look at him. I think he can get it done. And so far, so good in the playoffs. Talking with Chris King, co-host of Just Parlays with Chris King, Jim Williams, winners and whiners on the show. If you have any questions or comments, you hit us up in our comment line. And with that, I go to my good friend, longtime friend, co-host, and editor-in-chief of BASN Newsroom, Tony T. Mac McLean.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I really felt like the turning point for the AFC title game was the Chiefs not getting that last touchdown just before the half. And it's not so much not getting it, but the way they did it. And also that last drive was they got the field goal, but it was ugly as hell.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that play just before the half, and LA was talking about it too. Why do you try to run a screen pass, or basically a glorified screen, because he was in motion? You tried to get it out there. I didn't understand the play call. With 5 seconds, you don't have time for that. Either you get rid of it in a hurry, and that's a big knock on Mahomes, is that sometimes he's not the most decisive guy in the red zone, and that burned him. And like you said, that last drive, they nearly gave the game up right there because Mahomes got sacked. He fumbled. Joe Thuney was lucky to fall on it. But back-to-back sacks on the last drive when you have no timeouts, when you're sitting on the 4-yard line, what the hell are you thinking?
Yeah. And you guys, I guess you guys sort of alluded to it as well in regards to the Bengals offensive line. Did they, other than, the obvious that they were able to protect Joe, but what was it, a subtle what did you feel the difference was in them being able to make it so that Joe Burrow didn't have to give us a cumulus cloud forecast all day?
Well, I think a big part of it was the fact that Kansas City refused to blitz, and I don't know why Steve Spagnuolo didn't try to get more of a pass rush. Like LA said, they were trying to rely on their front four, and that didn't work. Why not throw a safety blitz? Why not blitz Ward off the corner or L'Jarius Sneed? Why not bring any of those guys just to make them do something? You let them sit back there. to the point where they were chipping guys off the end and everything else, but you're letting him stand back there and he's got nothing, no one around him. You saw Tennessee the week before; they beat him senseless.
Yeah,
it reminded me of, and I use this one a lot, but it reminded me of the Rocky II when Duke talks to Apollo and he says, "I saw you beat that man like I never saw a man get beat before, and the man kept coming after you." And that's what Tennessee did to Burrow, and he came back and beat him. Now, why Kansas City didn't do it, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm Spagnuolo's been getting a lot of mileage out of that Super Bowl for a few years now, and it seems like it all came to a thing. With the NFC game yesterday, you mentioned the kid that came in for Bigwell. If Bigwell's not able to play, do you think that they can still sustain that, or because to me their running game is
non-existent?
Yeah, and that's being nice to say the least.
Well, I think Blanton could step up. I mean, he obviously stepped right in. They didn't miss a step after Higbee went down yesterday, and you can't argue with catching 5 balls out of 5 targets. He'll be a nice safety valve in the middle, and it's something that Cincinnati's going to have to defend. They can't sit there and worry solely about OBJ and Kupp, or else they'll just pick them apart over the middle.
Mm-hmm. And one last one. There's all sorts of speculations about Rodgers and so many other people, but where do you see Garofalo next year?
Boy, I'll tell you what, that's going to be an interesting situation because obviously he's not going to be in San Francisco. They wasted too much draft capital getting Trey Lance. The sad part is there's not going to be any shortage of starting quarterback roles. He could end up in Pittsburgh, which I'm sure LA is thrilled to hear mention that.
Absolutely not, of course.
There you go. See, he loves it. You can put it on the board. LA wants him, but he's going to pick him up at the airport.
Yeah, and hit him with a Brotsworth probably, but that's a whole other thing.
They say Rodgers could end up in Denver. I don't know about that, but Garoppolo, he's going to end up somewhere. As to where, I mean, he could end up as a backup. There's a lot of teams that could use a veteran backup. Miami could use one. The Jets could use one. The Jets could use anybody. The Jets would probably sign LA right now.
They won't stop calling me, and I keep telling them, my arm is shot. So I know the thing.
I thought that you could probably be their number one running back.
No. I'm either a blocker or a thrower. I block for no one.
Okay, well, are you sure you can't throw? Because Zach Wilson could use somebody.
Nah. Not even on my left hand I can throw. No.
It's so funny though.
We tried Woody Johnson, just didn't pan out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, listen, it's so funny because I have a Bills and he's an Oilers fan on. You think about the Music City Miracle, T-Max, the old Oilers Titans guy, and you're a Bills fan. So I remember the Music City Miracle, but I also remember the Miracle at Rich in 1993. Where Charlie Jones on the commentary goes, when Buffalo makes it 35-31, he goes, "You got to love it, unless you're in Houston." Yeah. One thing I didn't like about that game was Todd Christensen was a terrible color commentator. Think about Charlie Jones, guys. Oh, my God. That's Don Criqui and Bob Trump.
Those old NBC 4:00 games where the Chargers are already up 7-0 by 4:10.
Yeah, here's the 10-minute
big Don Criqui guy. Mm-hmm. Big Don Criqui guy. Real quick, just to the NBA, Chris. So one of my kids is a Golden State fan, so he's in heaven. Clay is back and all that, nostalgia. And all that.
I'm a Utah fan, and I'm sitting there watching Donovan Mitchell sit in the concussion protocol for 7 games, Rudy Gobert being out with a calf strain, and Joe Ingles tearing an ACL.
I can't figure out Utah. We're going to get back to that. I can't figure them out. And then the other son is a Laker fan. So he's in Washington. he's in mourning with the Chiefs. He's a Chiefs guy, so he's in mourning with that. Now now you go to NBA and they 4 games under 500 or whatever the case. What did it? So the notion, Chris, is to trade Russell Westbrook, but you already knew who he was anyway. So why'd you get him in the first place? That's first point. Second point is, what are you going to get for him that's going to change this team? Third point to you, and you can address these, and then T, you can. Where are they going to be? Are they going to even make the playoffs? Do you even want to make the playoffs? I mean, I know the Lakers standard, but at this point, what are you going to do? LeBron can't give you 50, 25, and whatever all the time. AD can't stay healthy. And I said, and T knows, if AD's healthy, they got a chance. If he's not healthy, it's not going to work. So you got that, and you got the Russell thing, who you just essentially the Lakers are saying, just stand in the corner. We'll give you the ball every now and then. Just stand in the corner. Don't make no turnovers. Don't shoot bad threes. Don't do anything like that. And then the irony of it all is that he's their only guy now. Like everybody's hurt. LeBron taking days off because of the back-to-back. He's their only guy putting up 30. So I don't understand what the Lakers do, how they do it, Chris. I don't, what say you about the Lakers at this point?
Well, the point one, as Dennis Green would say, Russell Westbrook is who we thought he was.
Exactly.
He's the guy that, wants the ball, but he can't shoot to save his life.
Right.
I've seen enough shots where he'll fire up a jump shot and he'll hit the top of the backboard and bounce away or be a complete air ball. He reminds me, he's shooting like Rajon Rondo. And anybody knows that that's not a positive indictment on your shooting career.
Mm-hmm.
As for where the Lakers are, they're not in a good place. I mean, look at what you traded away to get Westbrook. You traded away Kuzma. Montrezl Harrell went to Washington in that trade. You've traded away picks. And you've traded away picks to get Anthony Davis. So now you have an empty cupboard, really, as far as building for the future. You've got those 3 guys that are making more money than most countries. And you have no bench to work with. I mean, who are you going to pass it off to? Do you want Talen Horton-Tucker shooting the ball? Do you want who do they even have left on the bench? Because I've looked at their lineup and I'm like, these guys are terrible. And it's not going to get any better. What are you going to get for Westbrook? Like you said, he's got a ridiculous contract. Nobody wants a guy that's not a team player. And let's be honest, if you think Westbrook's a team player, I got a bridge to sell you. He's already 33. He's had injury issues before. He's shooting 44% from the field. He's shooting 31% from 3. The best player that you've got outside of him is what? Carmelo Anthony, and he's 37.
And why don't they start? They need to start him. Try to get some instant offers. I mean, T and I used to him in New York. I mean, Melo going to give you something, and then you rest him. Why not start him to help the offense, and then rest him and bring in whoever they got?
I'm just looking at their lineup. You've got Austin Reeves. You've got Wayne Ellington. You've got Dwight Howard, who stopped being an effective player, 10 years ago?
Right.
Kent Bazemore, who I don't know if he's even playing right now. Well, no, I do remember he played against Philadelphia the other night and committed a couple fouls, and they took him out. But DeAndre Jordan, I mean, who wants these guys in crunch time? You've got Avery Bradley. He can't shoot either. It's going to get worse before it gets better for the Lakers. I mean, like you said,
are they going to make the playoffs, Chris? Will they make the playoffs?
Well, with the play-in game, pretty much everybody that's not Oklahoma City or Houston is still in the field or still in contention. You look at it right now, the Lakers are currently hold the 9 seed, which means they'd play Portland in the first play-in game for the right to play the winner of, if the season were to end today, they'd play the winner of the Clippers-Minnesota game to find out who would get the 7 and 8 seeds. Not really the most exciting matchups, but I mean, they've got to figure something out. They got to figure it out fast. And like I told you the other day, I should say I asked you, because people are saying fire Frank Vogel. It's not Frank Vogel's fault. Frank Vogel didn't go out and say, you know what we need? We need a point guard that wants to shoot the ball every time he comes down the floor and miss, and then get a bunch of rebounds and turn the ball over 55 times a game. And then you've got 3 guys on the floor that want to shoot the ball on every possession and a bunch of nobodies. That's not what Frank Vogel wants. Frank Vogel, when he had success in Indiana, they had a team concept. You don't have that here. It's, as Charles Barkley would say, there's no I in team, but there's an M and an E. And unfortunately, that sums up Russell Westbrook. And to some extent, it sums up LeBron and AD, because they all want the ball.
Let me just say this, and I'm gonna go to T real quick. And Chris, I know you got to go before 8, so I'll keep that in mind. Let me go to T. Here I'm torn, because number one, we know that Pelinko's the GM. We also know that LeBron says, "Hey, I want this toilet covered brown. It's gonna be covered brown." T, right? He gets what he wants.
It's already, if you look at the Lakers play, it's definitely brown.
It's definitely brown. So, but it, and so Vogel has nothing to do with the roster. I get that. But Vogel's a defensive coach. They don't play defense, T, at all. I know he had nothing. Again, I'm prefacing it with the fact that he had nothing to do with, Chris said, with the roster. Mm-hmm. But you are a defensive coach. So I see it in 2 ways. Like, the fact is that you have to put somebody on the court to play defense. Melo is never. We know Melo is not, and LeBron is not at that point where he gonna be the lockdown dude or anything like that. We know about Westbrook. We know all of those things. AD, he's not on. So Vogel still, as the coach, has to figure out something to play defense. He's a defensive coach. So I'm torn. Like, I understand what Chris is saying. He had if it was up to him, it probably wouldn't be all these offensive guys. But now you have it, T. You got to figure it out as a coach.
Well, and see, the only thing that can help him is that, in the West, it's sort of up and down, so you could somewhat get away with it. But if you're talking about, winning a championship, that's pretty much out the door. And even, let's say they get in. Well, to me, it's like a first round. Right. There isn't anybody. They're not going to beat Phoenix in a big series. They're not going to beat. Who you say they were going to be possibly playing?
Minnesota.
Yeah, in the play-in game, they would play Minnesota.
That's no guarantee either.
Right.
That's no guarantee because at least again there is a hint of defense in Minnesota, but other than the LAPD, there is no defense in Lakerland. The best, the best team in LA right now is the Clippers, and that's sort of like being the world's tallest midget at this point.
Well, we like to joke on our show. The best teams in LA are the UCLA and USC.
Yeah, probably they could probably get by. They could probably get by out of the first round at the very least, because it's the epitome of a fantasy league team.
Right.
Nothing more, nothing less.
That's probably the best way you could put it.
It is it's and see therein lies the problem, because I remember LA, when they made the trade to put together their pseudo big three, I felt like the only way that this would work is if you could get 65 to 70 games out of the big three. And even then, that was still, you still have to fall back on defense, because we all know once the playoffs start, everything is half court, and it's almost like football in the sense of where it's possession by possession, and you're not gonna beat teams 125 to 118 in the postseason. Right. It's just not. It's not going to happen. So they'll probably get in, but it's going to be ugly. It's going to be very, very ugly.
Chris, real quick, just if you had to, and I'll have you on later in the week, if you had to, in terms of playoffs, NBA, who would be your finals? Who would be your sleepers?
Well, I mean, don't sleep on Memphis. I mean, everybody slept on Memphis early on.
I'll
admit, I slept on Memphis too.
I don't understand why the NBA is not pushing this kid. This kid is balling. How do you not have Ja Morant in almost every game that you can? You can adjust the schedule. This kid is balling. I don't understand why they don't put him in there.
I agree. I mean, he's played some great basketball. They'll be even better once Dylan Brooks comes back from his sprained ankle after the All-Star break. But, I mean, they're on a roll. I mean, they're 35-17. That puts them better than anybody in the Eastern Conference. And, I mean, we know the Eastern Conference is the little sisters of the poor most of the time anyway. But, I mean, they're playing good basketball. You know, you can't sleep on them. As much as I hate it because they play in the Northwest Division with Utah, I can't say you can ever count Denver out because Jamal Murray is going to come back at some point. You've got Jokic in the middle. I mean, that's a dangerous combination if Murray can come back and be healthy. In the East, I think who would have thought Cleveland would be 10 games above 500 with that lineup?
Yeah,
I mean, and the Bulls are playing good basketball. But I think if you're going to look at the finals, I think, you know, the road's still going to have to go through either Phoenix or Golden State. Obviously, you know, the Suns were there last year. They're still pretty much the same team they were. Golden State, like you said, they've got Thompson back now. Can he stay healthy? Can Draymond Green come back from the back injury he's dealing with right now and be a contributor? In the East, but you could throw a dart and pick about 6 different teams because you look at 1 through 6 right now, they're all separated by about 2.5 games. And Charlotte is right behind them, though I'm not putting Charlotte in that group. Brooklyn, you know, I was surprised that first they said, well, we're not going to play Kyrie Irving. Then we're going to play him, you know, in road games. Then it was going to be, well, we're going to see if we can get an exemption so he can play at the Barclays Center. I don't think that's gone anywhere yet. Next, it's going to be, well, he can only play at the Barclays Center on days that end in Y and months that have more than 30 days. So,
just take the shot, you Mayron.
If I had to pick a team out of the East, I really like, and this is a surprise but I really like Miami. You look at the fact that the Heat has played so well despite missing Jimmy Butler for an extended period, despite missing Bam Adebayo for an extended period. What Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra have done with that roster is the exact opposite of what Pelinka has done with the Lakers. Yeah. They've got their stars, but they've got guys that can come off the bench, guys that nobody will pay attention to. Nobody pays attention to Max Struss. Nobody pays attention to Gabe Vincent. Nobody pays attention to these guys, but they come in and they know their role. Once in a while, you'll see them put up 20, 25 points in a game because somebody else is missing. And, you know, 1 through 12, they're probably the most complete team in the East.
T, real quick, you know, if you had to choose the NBA Finals, just quick at this point, I never count out champions, and you got the Greek Freak in Milwaukee, so I'm always gonna put them in. I'm a Sixer fan, as you know, but I'm always gonna put Milwaukee in there. And then you see what's happening out west.
I think you know, put a gun to my head right now. I think we get a repeat. I think we get Phoenix and Milwaukee all over again. You know, barring something really silly. I think in many ways Phoenix is probably a little bit more. The fact that they got to the finals last year is probably going to help them in the run now because last year they sort of, I won't say they snuck up, but they no one, I don't think anybody expected them to get to the finals. But now that they've gotten there and they've had that behind them and they're still rallying, you know, they're still going to try to rally around Chris Paul. And with Milwaukee, the only thing that could possibly knock them off, you know, like Chris was saying, is Miami. I watched the way that they beat up the Knicks the other night, and they're going to be a tough out in this. I will. The one team I think that can go a little bit farther than a lot of people think, sort of like Atlanta did last year. I like the Bullets. I really do. I think the Bullets, with a decent mix of decent mix of veterans and youth, and you also say to yourself, why didn't they hire West Jr., 2 years ago, in a sense? Maybe they would be where, say, Atlanta or Miami is now. But
West Unseld.
Yeah, West Unseld Jr. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But look, I'm not saying Washington's going to get to the finals, but they may get to a couple of rounds this year, only because the East is what they can sort of do what Atlanta did last year, sort of come from out of nowhere and make a decent run.
Yeah, real quick, because I know Chris, you got to go. You don't have to give Super Bowl because I wanted to get you on Thursday, but coaching. You and I have talked about. You are very candid, and I really respect you. 4 coaches have been hired. Josh McDaniels, the Raiders. No black coaches, no minorities. What do you think is going to happen with a Leslie Frazier, Eric Bieniemy, a Byron Leftwich, some of the others out there, Flores and stuff? What do you think is going to happen at this point, real quick?
Well, to be honest, I think that Flores was probably the number 2 choice in New York with the Giants. I'm surprised. I think Brian Daboll got the job because of Joe Schoen taking the GM job. I think he'll catch on somewhere. I think that Leftwich, he's going to be a front runner in Jacksonville. But I'm also, and Jim brought this up earlier when we were talking about it, with Bruce Arians in the last year of his contract, I have to wonder if either he or Todd Bowles sticks around saying, well, Bruce is going to probably retire after this season so I can take over Tampa Bay. The McDaniels to hire made no sense to me for the Raiders. They either go after somebody like Bieniemy where A, it's addition by subtraction because you're taking him away from Kansas City and you're getting a talented offensive mind, or B, they could have kept Rich Bisaccia. McDaniels is let's be honest, he's a scrub when it comes to being a head coach. He didn't get it done in Denver. I don't think he's going to get it done here either. But you're right. A lot of these minority coaches, they are getting overlooked. And I know that you're a Steelers fan and the Rooney Rule and everything else, but I don't know if the Rooney Rule has helped as much as it should, given the fact that some of these coaching hires are knee-jerk reactions. Like, we're going to hire this guy because he did this here. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that guy's the best fit for your organization. There could be a better guy like a Flores who still should be coaching in Miami, and this is coming from a guy that hates the Dolphins. He should still be in Miami. It was a power struggle, and then you hear Stephen Ross talking about how Jim Harbaugh is great and everything else. If Harbaugh goes to South Beach, the Miami Dolphins will go further down the toilet. They were better off with Flores. I'd like to see him in Minnesota even because the Vikings, they've got a team that's in playoff contention. And he obviously is a winner as a coach. I mean, he took a Miami team that had nothing and had him in the hunt for the playoffs. He'd be a good fit there.
Yeah. And the thing is, like you said, it's like put us in positions to succeed. If we fail, T and I talk about this all the time. We fail, then we fail. If we don't win games, then fire our butt. But put us in positions to find out. That's it. It's really that simple. It's really not that complicated. Chris, before you go, let people know how they can follow you. And thank you so much. I'll have you on Thursday. Thank you so much, sir.
Oh, it's no problem. My Twitter handle's right there, Betting Royalty, because they thought that would be a catchy name because of the fact that it plays off the King name. You can catch me on Winners and Winers. I'm usually writing umpteen games a day because somebody's got to. And Monday to Friday, Jim and I have Just Parlays. We cover college basketball. We cover the NBA. We cover the NHL. We cover football. During the summer, if baseball ever figures out what they're going to be doing, we'll talk about that too.
Yes.
But I mean, You name it, we cover it. And, as you saw in LA, we don't just talk about the Power 5 conferences. We don't talk about Duke and Kentucky and all the teams that everybody knows about. We like to talk about teams that people don't necessarily know because, they're not on TV. So there's 358 teams in Division One, but, if you watch ESPN or you watch Fox Sports, you'll see about 12.
Right.
So we like to talk about conferences like the America East, the Mid-American, the Metro Atlantic, the Colonial, the Mid-Eastern, the SWAG, the Mountain West. We talked about Florida A&M today. We talked about Norfolk State and UNC Central with Lavelle Motown. We talked about all these teams because those teams are good teams and they deserve to be talked about too, instead of just going, coming up next, it's Kansas and Texas Tech on ESPN 47, followed by golf or whatever else they're going to show.
Thank you.
There's a lot of good small conferences out there, and there's a lot of good teams that don't make the tournament because you see these power conferences suck up bids for teams that were 14 and 13 or whatever, and 9 and 11 in their conference. Meanwhile, you got a team that's 27 and 4 and went 15 and 2 or 15 and 3 in their conference that don't get in because of the fact that they didn't win their conference tournament. But those teams deserve to get talked about too, and that's what we do. We try to dig up some of these teams that most people don't necessarily follow. Like we talked about Vermont. How many people talk about Vermont?
Right.
How many people, like we said, how many people talk about Florida A&M with the job that Robert McCollum's done down there, or Lavelle Motown at UNC Central? I mean, these are all good teams that get overlooked, and it's a shame, really.
Well, listen, I certainly appreciate you and what you've done, not just for the small schools, sir, but certainly because of the HBCUs that you highlight. You just highlighted a bunch of FAMU and those black colleges. I certainly appreciate that, and I definitely think that is a reason why those things are in place. I will have you on Thursday. You and I will get off air about that. Thank you so much. God bless. Go pick
Thank
up
you.
your baby. I know you got
Nice to meet you, Tony.
You too. You take care now.
You too.
Absolutely. So we're gonna do that, and thank you so much, Chris, for coming on. T, before we wrap everything up, I want to look at and he and I had actually had some baseball conversation. You guys would be like really on the same page. But we had some conversations about that, and the fact is that when you look at the overall conversation and you look at the overall beauty of the sport, that baseball continues to fall short, is that at the end of the day, it's baseball looking at football and basketball and saying, we're making a calculated decision that we're going to lock these dudes out and we're just going to do what we do. Now, keep in mind, like you said, baseball feels like they're still the sport in some areas. Mm-hmm. Are they making a dangerous decision calculating the fact that football is football, the draft's coming up, NBA is still going to play through April, and then you got baseball and the draft and then all these different and spring training coming. Are they making a bad calculated decision in terms of what they're trying to do with the lockout?
Absolutely. I mean, look, they, I don't think they really have come to grips with how they lost a generation of folks in 94.
A generation. I'm glad you said it. A generation, because you and I love it. You and I love it, but they lost my son. They lost my son. They did.
Oh, they lost a bunch of sons and daughters and what have you. And the crazy thing is, you could start to see where they were starting to turn the corner. And again, look, in the big cities, baseball is still going. In New York, in LA, in Chicago, places where there are multiple teams, or there's long time fan bases. They're going to be there, but there is no new blood. And see, also you've all but alienated all your longtime fans now. And this whole thing with the robo umps and just the whole thing of
it's really weird. That mobile umps thing is really weird to me. Like,
it's look, as much as we whine and moan about umps and officials and what have you, there's still I still rather have them there. My thing is,
I'm with you.
I think, let's put it this way. I think you can do live umpiring, but also have replay. You just have to use it correctly. They still in replay in and of itself is not the problem. The way it's been used and abused, that's been the problem.
And also, Tucci, at the most highest level, where you have the players on one side, owners on the other side, we still dealing with, should you have the DH? We're still dealing with all these other stuff. Like, all of that should be implemented and in place. And I think that as a fan, growing up and hitting the ball and catching the ball, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't. And I don't know where they go from here in that regard.
Well, no, it's a look. The whole, they've sold their soul to the point now where I think even folks who were anti DH are now pro DH only because it would be a change. Because see, here's the thing. I appreciate the slugfest, but I also appreciate the no hitters and the 2-1, 3-2 games as well. I think that's what the beauty of the sport has always been, is that you can have chicks digging the long ball at some point, but you can also make it so that you appreciate. I mean, think of this. What's the one player that we still talk about, that we're still talking about, and we have talked about over the last 2 years? It's Ohtani, right. And the fact that he's basically he's the ultimate throwback in the sense of he's a guy that could pitch a shutout one day, and then he's a guy that can also hit 4 home runs in a game as well. Now, and you can see where baseball is, literally trying to, they're basically going to try to make him the face of the game, good, bad, or indifferent. He's been, the fact that he's on the cover of the video game this year, that speaks a lot as well. But see,
and that's the good part of baseball. Like, my sons don't know who Roberto Clemente was unless they played MLB 2000, whatever. So that, I mean, say what you want, T. That part of it, like, they didn't know who players were, and so baseball put it in a little game. It might be wrong, but now they know that they know them in the history.
Well, it's never.
I just threw Clemente in there. I'm just saying.
Yeah, sure.
Now they know who players are. Keith Fernandez and stuff, because they're inside the MLB.com, website, and they're playing it. But it's not really authentic, but it is what it is, and I can live with that.
Well, it's not, I see, again, if you're willing to really see the nuts and bolts of stuff, the information's out there, between between the individual team sites, the individual, league sites. Look, I'll do a Google search on the YouTube in a minute. I watched the World Series highlight film about a week or so ago. Matter of fact, when we were getting hit with all the snow on Saturday, I was watching the Caribbean World Series. But see, that's just me. I'm a base, I'm a baseball fan. But see,
but that's why I said that. That's why
the information's there. The information's there. And it's with whether it's football, baseball, basketball, hockey, tiddlywinks. We got the Olympics basically starting in 3 days as well. The information is there, but you still have to push the product. And baseball to me has always been lazy in pushing product. Their whole thing has always been, we're the national pastime and we don't have to sell ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, but see, there comes a time when you have to sell. And see, it took the strike and a few other things for them to really start to push the game. Because see, again, in the major cities, it's going to be there. But but see, you got to push it in Tampa. You have to push it in Seattle, in other places. Now, Seattle's just coming off of a nice of a nice playoff run, and now we're going to see if they're going to be able to sustain it. But then,
but even in the major markets, don't you need to push it in LA and New York? And do you have to push it in terms of the climate? No, because that's how I feel. It's like people don't love the game. People don't love the game like we do. People don't love the game like we do. So if you don't love the game, you got to push it. It's not just LA and New York. You have to push the game. If you love the game, you push the game.
Well, those cities that you just talked about, they're going to push it. Look, basically LA, you're encompassing the Angels and the Dodgers.
Right.
And mind you, you've got 3 other teams within a 40-50 mile radius from each other. The Giants, the Padres, and the last I checked, there's still a team in Oakland.
Right.
For now. But and see, in the big cities, you have to put. You don't necessarily have to push it because see again.
See, I think you do.
You
do.
Yes and no. I don't think as much because see, look, in New York, there is a dividing line. You're either a Met fan or a Yankee fan. There is no such thing as what in LA, you're either an Angel fan or you're a Dodger fan. In Chicago, you're either a South Sider or a North Sider. Same thing in Ohio. You're either a Guardians fan or a Reds fan, and so on and so on and so forth.
But that's the thing. The only thing is that but you're in Cincinnati. So what do you push? What are you pushing in Cincinnati? You're a Reds fan, and then you might not be a Reds fan. And so you're not getting pushed because you're not a Reds fan. So you're in Cincinnati and you're a Reds, it's all about the Reds in baseball. That all I'm saying is that like in the big markets, I get it. I get what you're saying. It's that in the small markets, if you're in Pittsburgh, are you a Phillies fan? You a Pirate fan? Like, are you? I mean, it just seems as though there's some debate that goes into it. On top of the fact that what's going on, as you mentioned, in terms of what the owners are doing, I just think it hurts the game if you're in the smaller markets where you don't have, it's Mets or Yankees, it's Dodgers or whatever. We ain't in that market. You might be in Topeka, Kansas. So then what do you do then? Like, what do you do?
Well, there's you got Milwaukee, and Milwaukee has a following. Kansas City is sort of down right now. Now, see, the funny thing is, a year ago at this time, there was probably more buzz about the Reds than there was the Bengals.
Right.
But here we are a year later. The Bengals are on the way to the Super Bowl, and the Reds are, in a sense, rebuilding again.
But we still got talent, though. So how do you promote that talent in the midst of Joe Burrow getting you to the Super Bowl?
Well, you sort of buy your time. See, this is where the lockout hurts because you can't really push, lot of your, and I don't mean to, I think a lot of the younger sports fans right now is out of sight, out of mind. Right now Cincinnati's not thinking about the Reds because the Bengals are on a Super Bowl run.
Good point.
And in Milwaukee, people are probably still trying to figure out if Serpico is going to come back and be quarterback for the for the Packers, as opposed to can the Brewers, get back into the playoffs again this year. Now take Atlanta. Now you have Georgia finally breaking through. Beating Alabama of all people in the championship game.
Right.
You've got the Braves that came literally out of nowhere. They came to a certain extent. They came out of nowhere,
and they won. But you predicted that, by the way.
Well,
you thought they could win.
All I ever said was that I think that people were selling them short because, to me, they're sort of like where they were when they began that run in the 90s, where they had the good pitching and they had a very young nucleus. Here's the scary thing about the Braves. They did that last year without Acuna. That's the scary part of the Braves.
Give yourself some credit, because you said, "Hey,
look."
Now, man, you said do not count out the Braves. You said that. You said that.
Yeah.
You
did. I did. Yeah. But again, it was to me again because, and see, this is where sometimes when we get caught up in the big markets as opposed to the actual team. Now, look.
Well, you understand the pitching better, so anyway.
Well, no, it's not even so much that. Look, when Acuna went down, I was like everybody else. They're done. But again, it's a testament to pitching and defense and to how that front office went out and didn't get, look, they didn't, the three moves that they made, getting Soler, getting Jock Peterson, and getting Eddie Rosario, those weren't like, people weren't like, oh, those are solid moves. They were like, okay, at least they're making the up. And then, especially now with the playoffs being the way they are now, it's almost like there's an NCAA feel to it now because of the nature of it as well. So while it was somewhat improbable, it wasn't crazily, I don't know, but I basically say all that to basically say that this is the dumbest thing baseball could do right now. When you're already sort of teetering on the brink, you're going to have a work stoppage, and you have the possibility of losing another generation of kids to baseball, and most importantly, you're alienating the longtime fans who are just tired of all of this mess. And it's tough to follow baseball right now because baseball is just so ass backwards on and off the field.
Right, and that's really where I was going in terms of what you thought about that, in terms of the solid, answers and questions that went with that. Final question for you. Timing is everything. And I think that, and you know this, you know, T, optics is everything. So does baseball get this done before NFL draft so there won't be sidebar or whatever? Or what do you see happening?
I think spring training will start late. And I think if spring training starts late, then the regular season is going to start. Let's put it this way. Tomorrow's February 1st.
Right.
Technically, pitchers and catchers report on the 15th. Now, the last time we talked, they had been meeting. Now, I don't know when the next scheduled negotiation is. Surprise, surprise, it was a money issue. in regards to revenue, which is the biggest stickler. They seem to have some of the other things squared away. So if they're able to at least, let's put it this way. I'll say this. If they don't make any progress within the next 7 to 10 days, spring training is not going to start on time.
Oh, wow. So then what happens? So then what happens with spring training?
Well, I mean, spring training, see, you can cut into spring training. See, to me, the biggest thing is, are you going to get 162 games in this year? And the longer this goes, the longer the possibility remains of them not having a full season. But like I said, to me, if it's not done within the next 7 to 10 days,
not gonna happen.
No.
Wow.
That's just mine.
So where do you go from there then, T?
It's going to be like it's going to be
in a week.
Well, let's put it this way. I think we're going to have, I would not be surprised if we have another 2020 season, in the sense where maybe we have another 80 to 100 game sprint, which would just bastardize everything else again. I mean, last year,
definitely in the sense that, okay, well, there's the asterisk. So they won, but they really didn't win because there was an asterisk by. That's the problem I have. Like well,
it's put this way. I don't, I give the Dodgers their due for winning it during the, whatever, however you want to, play it out. I give them their due because it was destined for them to win it at some point. They've been so close, and even last year, they got to the end. They got to the NLCS. It's just that in this instance, the better team won. Now, the thing is, let's put it this way: if they're able to get this done in time when we get a full season, see, there's still a lot of moves that are out there. Chris Bryant is still out there without a team. There's a bunch of other prominent free agents that are out there that still haven't been picked up. So once they finally do get the high sign, then you're going to see like what happened in '95, where you're going to see a lot of teams. There's going to be a lot of shift over or what have you. Just in this area, there's rumors that the team in Queens may go after Kershaw. So, yeah, it's like,
nope, not at all.
Well, the thing, the only good thing about that would be, he's not coming there to be the guy. And let's face it, wouldn't be a terrible acquisition for making him, like, say, the fourth or fifth starter. But at this, put it this way, I would still like to see them get another bat. I'd like to see this third base thing get squared away. If they, the rumors, there've been all sorts of rumors in regards to Bryant going there and what have you. But again, there's still a lot of huge moves that are out there on the table if and when they do get. Because see, the thing is, once they do finally say, okay, we're playing, trust that first week or so, you're going to see all sorts of craziness, because there's still a lot of big names out there that are still trying to, whatever. And in many ways, that's the reason why that's the main reason why we're in the situation where we're in now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the only thing I'm saying is that you have to see what comes that way. But yeah, I just don't. Go ahead.
You know what? The best thing I could tell, I know I've been saying for whatever, wake me up when they got an agreement. Wake me up when they have an agreement. Until I hear them say we have an agreement and whatever, as far as I'm concerned, the only baseball that I'm watching right now is the Caribbean World Series.
Let people know how they can follow you on BASN and all of that, sir.
All right, our website is www.basnnewsroom.com, and we're on social media at Facebook at Still Soul Sports, and we're also on Instagram at BASN_newsroom.
You're doing it, man. I appreciate you. You be careful, okay?
As long as I don't have to do any more shoveling, I'm good.
You're gonna have to. You know where you are. You have to shovel. So we'll talk.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of kids that like to shovel anymore. So.
Well, you can have it. Thanks,
yeah.
Steve. Appreciate you, man.
Take care, man. Talk to you.
Okay.
Welcome to Total Wine and More. It's much more than a wine store. It's the eighth wonder of the world.
When people talk about Total Wine and More, they get a little carried away. We're just a big, friendly place run by people with a passion for wine, beer, and spirits.
8,000 different wines, 2,500 different beers, 3,000 spirits, and friendly, helpful experts at every turn.
You know what? Maybe we are the eighth wonder of the world.
Shop in store or online at TotalWine.com.
May I help you?
Yeah, it's just cold. My sinuses feel like they're going to explode.
Sudafed, aisle 5.
My allergies have my sinuses all stuffed up.
Sudafed, aisle 5.
Tell the man what's wrong.
My sinuses. Sudafed, aisle 5.
Sinus misery? Get Sudafed. Nothing stronger at relieving even your worst sinus symptoms. Not even a prescription.
This could just...
Sudafed, aisle 5.
Sudafed. Prescription strength sinus relief. Based on 24-hour dose of pseudoephedrine.
To the show, the Batchelor News Radio Show. We thank you for joining us wherever you are. You are a part of this broadcast. We appreciate you checking in. You did not have to do that. Don't forget, you can watch us on YouTube at LA Batchelor, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and of course, Big Mind Entertainment. If you have Roku or Fire Stick, you can download the Big Mind Entertainment app, and you can watch there the audio version rebroadcast at thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. Want to bring in my guest. He is a columnist and director of content development for Alabama Media Group, AL.com. And of course, you've seen his work on various other places in terms of Sports Illustrated. He worked and was featured on the Last Dance with NBA Hall of Famer Michael Jordan's final season, co-authored books with Magic Johnson and Charles Barkley and all these other folks. Well respected, especially with me. He is Roy S. Johnson. And Mr. Johnson, always a pleasure to talk with you, and thanks for joining us.
Good evening. I appreciate you having me. I apologize for not having my camera on. I'm in my car, and I don't think the local law enforcement would appreciate me trying to look good for you and your audience as I'm navigating the street. So I apologize.
No worries. Well, look, we don't want you getting in trouble with law enforcement just to do some interview on some show, right? So I understand. Listen, you've done so much, the gamut, like you've just sports and outside sports. And of course, this particular article you wrote, this opinion column you wrote on as it was published as it relates to Dr. King. The title, On This Day and Beyond, Black Folks, We Must Honor Dr. King This Way. Stop Killing Each Other. Now, I just want to read just the short part of the beginning. You said, quote, I don't want to see another balloon rise towards the clouds to honor a dead child, an innocent dead child. I don't want to hear another mother's anguish, see another's father's tears, or watch another teenagers cling to a friend as they share kind of grief no young person should bear. I don't want to look at another child's eyes, see them smile, hear them giggle like kids do, and think it could have been them. Today, as we do each January, we should do, all of us, honor the life, legacy, and sacrifice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We'll reread his quotes, most of which are relevant today, sadly, as they were last century. I wanted to start with that because when you write that and we look at the climate that we're in, not just the COVID climate, Mr. Johnson, but also the climate of our divide amongst ourselves. Where do we start? Because, there's education that needs to happen amongst our culture. We have to get back to a mentality of a village to raise a child. We're missing so much. So where would be the origin, the beginning to get to us not killing each other?
I wish I had a simple answer. We had all day to try to dissect what is clearly a complicated and complex ecosystem that didn't evolve overnight, and so it's impossible and not realistic to think it can be solved overnight. Certainly for me, and I think for many of us, the beginning is acknowledgement. Just as with any challenge, when you're in AA, you stand up at the meeting and say, "Hi, I'm Lloyd, I'm an alcoholic," and they that's the first step in terms of rehabilitation. And I am very well aware of the conditions and circumstances that have contributed to a place that often makes young people make desperate decisions, make deadly decisions. We all know that poverty creates situations and creates a lack of hopelessness that leads people to believe that their lives are not worthless and are not worth much, and that the lives of others are worth even less. So we know that there are things that led up to this, but at some point, I think we all have to look at each other and look in the mirror and see what we see and say, okay, we have to demonstrate the same level of outrage when we kill our own as we do when others kill us, whether they are law enforcement or in any other situation. The director of a local Boys and Girls Club, and I'll give you some background, a 16-year-old here, a junior at a local high school, was coming home from work. And she was riding in her great aunt's car. This was a young person who liked to play the saxophone, who was doing reasonably well in school, who had just been selected as the member of the year at the local Boys and Girls Club. So she had a bright future. And as she was in her neighborhood, in her great aunt's car, a shootout occurred nearby, and someone using what was clearly an assault rifle sprayed bullets toward a car, and some of those bullets, as they often do, go where they're not intended. One of them pierced the great aunt's car and struck the young girl. The aunt drove to a local fire station, and the girl was taken to the hospital, but she died. And we have all read the headlines and seen stories, no matter where you live, of young Black kids dying, often at the hands of other Black kids or Black youth. And at some point, we just all have to, we kind of go about our lives. Our hearts hurt. We feel something, and yet we all go about our lives. But if something happens or someone else commits a crime against us, we march in the streets, as we should. We should to respond to any sort of injustice done to us by others. But I think I'm just saying that it's time for us to demonstrate that same level of outrage, that same level of just, we can't have this anymore with ourselves. And so it starts with doing just that and sending that message to particularly our youth that there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better decision. There's got to be a consideration of other choices, to take a deep breath. I love what organizations like the Boys and Girls Club and thousands of others around the country are doing to pour into our youth. And I want to make sure that your listeners understand that the vast majority of our young people are going to school. They're doing the right thing. They're trying to make the right decisions. So I don't want to at all have us paint our generation as one that has fallen off a cliff, because the numbers show that this is just a small number, a small percentage of our youth that are committing the kind of crimes and putting themselves in situations and doing the kind of decisions that are costing people their lives. But it's more and more, and one life lost is too many. One life one young person paralyzed, because it's really two lives. It's the life of the person who dies, and it's the life of the person who pulls the trigger. Even if it's something they have to live with the rest of their lives, and if they get caught, and I think most of us do hope that those people who commit these kinds of crimes are caught and are punished to the full extent of the law, their lives are over too. So I just think it's time for us to not shy away from being critical of ourselves and just forcing ourselves to say, hey, this is a problem in our community, and we have to first acknowledge it before we begin to address how to change it, how to fix it, and how to twist that lever so that we begin going the other direction of saving lives instead of lives.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with Roy S. Johnson here on the Batchelor News radio show. So, some people feel like integration led to infiltration. In other words, once we wanted to integrate, we had our Jezebels and our Judas that were amongst us that, worked for the other side, let's call it, to keep us oppressed and everything. I say that to ask this and to be an advocate, just not to just say it, but just to ask how much of the origin of oppression, of Jim Crow, going way back, where we didn't either understand or never climbed out of that situation, has led to where we are now in terms of killing ourselves.
There's no question that that today has an impact on tomorrow. Yesterday has an impact on today. So I'm not a trained historian, so I could not sit here and would even try to articulate the impact of all of our experiences on the conditions and circumstances and decisions that we make today. No doubt that whether it's redlining, Jim Crow, the distribution of our socioeconomic groups, whereas I'm old enough to remember